Are you worried your book is meandering and going nowhere? Do you think the dialogue is clunky and unrealistic? My name is Mr. Robert Mumford. Hello, Mr. Robert Mumford. Would you like a cup of water? Yes, I would. Thank you kindly. Here you are, Mr. Robert Mumford. Why, thank you. Or do you think that your work is a masterpiece, but are also worried that you might think it's a masterpiece because your mommy told you so? Thank you, Mommy. My mommy didn't say my work was a masterpiece. Then what you need is a beta reader. What's a beta reader? Hi, I'm Marcus, and I'm the idiot on the writer's block. If you're new to the channel, I, the idiot, ask experts for tips on how to write, publish, and promote my first fiction novel. For all the questions I've already asked on the writer's block, click this link right here. Also, the book trailer for my book, Call 1-800-KILLER-GUY, is out now. Click on this link to see that trailer. And to pre-order copies, links are in the description below. Now, I discovered the term beta readers while doing research for this channel. I never actually knew what it was. So I decided to throw the term on the writer's block and ask my experts. What is a beta reader and how do you get them? And here are my experts to answer the question, what is a beta reader and how do you get them?
Beta readers, I believe they're your saviors. Someone needs beta readers when they choose self-publishing, because they will point out mistakes, plot holes. They will point out many things that the author might overlook. And well, I have also had beta readers for my newest book, and they proved to be very helpful. I'm very glad for their advice, because without it, I don't know if the book would be as good as it is. Well, I have, let's say, somehow large following on Twitter, and I trust most of my followers, so I asked there, and I had a great response. I chose, I think I chose like 10 beta readers and 20 ARC reviewers. Not everyone will reply back, not everyone will give advice, and not everyone will leave reviews, but it's great to have them anyway.
I think if I was starting from scratch, I would definitely get some people to read it, people that I respected or I felt were my target audience for the book. Maybe you want people who weren't my friends because they just say something nice and you don't really know. I have always had a very frank and honest husband. He would never, I mean, he reads things and he does give me proper advice, and I always hate it and then I'm grateful later. So I'm lucky in that way. And now as well, because I've got my agent, she's very communicative. It's never too much for me to contact her, and she always wants to read bits and pieces, and she'll call a spade as well. She'll say, no, that's good, but it hasn't got that magic. And I'd rather be knocked down at the idea stage or the first couple of chapters stage than when you've written 80,000 words. So I think retrospectively, feedback can be great.
Sure. I'm a classic overwriter, so I only ask other people to beta my short stories. I feel pretty comfortable asking another writer to take a look at. So for my big book, which is over 100,000 words, the two people I conscripted are my brother and my husband. I know a lot of the writing guides out there say don't use friends and family, but both of these two are very analytical in how they look at the world. My brother feels no remorse whatsoever telling me that something was boring or something just didn't work for him. My husband, I asked him just to read it as a reader. And the next thing I know, he's got a spreadsheet going. He's making hand notes. I haven't even opened all of his feedback yet because I'm like, that's homework. That's just an assignment. So he had an editor hat on, and I kept telling him, I just need to know what you think of the story. Like, is it worth continuing? Maybe it's so dull and so tedious that I should just be done with it at this point. And it took them a long time to both be done at the same time. One thing I did as soon as they were both done is I had a phone call with the three of us, and I just asked them questions. I did send them questions, things I'd like them to keep in mind as they were reading. I have about 15 questions that I use. But when we were done, I asked them, like, who do you think would read this book? Where would you expect to find it in a bookstore? And through this conversation, I realized I had not written the adult post-apocalyptic sci-fi thriller I thought I had. I had written a new adult post-apocalyptic fantasy adventure story. So it was really interesting because what I thought I had put into my story, they read in a completely different way. And they could tell me why they wouldn't expect to find this in a sci-fi section and why it would be fantasy, even though I don't have magic or dragons or anything that I associate, kind of more the high fantasy. They had some differing opinions on how much I needed to put in. Both of them agreed that I did not give them enough information about how the world ended, which I thought was interesting. My story, it's not about the end of the world. It's about what happens a couple of 100 years after the end of the world. But both of them wanted to know, like, why did our world fail? And I'm like, you guys realize this is just the story, right? But the fact that they were so enthusiastic about, was it a war? Was it a pandemic? I thought it was this because you gave these little clues. Was I right? And it was really encouraging that they really got into the story. I think I annoyed them at first. So before we had the phone call, because first thing I asked both of them is, did you like it? And they both said yes, but they're kind of required to say that. And then I said, but does it feel like a real book? And they both said yes. And I said, but like a real book? And they're like, still yes.
A beta reader, I think that's someone who you work with, who might not be, a full-fledged editor, but who gets something early on and gives you extra feedback on it before it gets to the point where you send out the ARC, the ARC versions of something. Sometimes for ARC versions, people will point out little things that they noticed. But first and foremost, it's about, getting the book out early, getting opinions, getting buzz on it. But also, of course, if there are issues. But I think that sometimes beta readers might be more involved in the editorial and revision process, but not always. If I give someone a copy of something and they want to give feedback like a beta, that's cool. But I'm not going to force everyone to, or expect them to read it with a more critical eye like beta readers do. Sometimes for advanced review copies, it's for the pleasure of reading, noticing little things, there you go. But if I beta read something, I'm there looking for grammar issues. I'm looking for anything. I read much more slowly. I take more time with it because I want to make sure that I'm giving it the attention at multiple levels that it deserves. First of all, I've made some wonderful friends in the writing community on Twitter. So for people that have liked my work, I ask them, hey, would you like to beta read? I beta read for some people and others beta read for me. My publisher also has editors. And so I work with editors there, and I also get opinions from, again, friends on Twitter. My best friend, she read the most current book. I dedicated it to her. So I also let some family members read it. But again, I try to take that for what it is. My mother's like, oh, I love your books. These are so great, which, I appreciate. But at the same time, if I'm going to give it to someone, I appreciate the critical feedback. So I've had friends tell me, okay, this is working, but also this seems a little awkward here. So I would say reaching out to friends and family to get impressions, but also people that, if you have any writer, I don't do the writers group thing because right now it's, pandemic-y, I'm an introvert. So I've made, the writing community on Twitter is great for the beta readers, and I reciprocate too. If someone's going to beta read for me, and I think I could do a good job beta reading for them, then I'm like, yeah, give it to me. And for ARC reviewers, I also ask people who like my first book, hey, do you want an upcoming copy of this? And my publisher also gave some advanced review copies to people. I can talk. One thing I did for creating the Moon Hunters is I started a newsletter a digital newsletter. And so I asked people if they wanted a copy of, that book then. So I think that, getting a following, getting a newsletter started, people you interact with closely, if they love your work or if they're interested in it, giving them a copy of it in advance is a good thing. Although, it's always good to be prepared for, honest opinions on stuff too. So, as a writer, when getting feedback from, my editor at my publisher, that's the stuff where I'm like, okay, we're going to iron this out, and anything that they say, I really consider. And I'm also not afraid to say, oh, I think this should stay, versus, not automatically embrace it. And with beta readers too, I really think about the feedback, because I don't accept every single thing, because sometimes it's contradictory. But I think that working with people who are close to you, but also getting people who will be willing to tell you the honest truth, is important for those.
And there you have it, the explanation of what a beta reader is. Thank you to the experts for answering my question. You can check in the description below for links to their work. And don't forget to check out the book trailer for Call 1-800 Guy Book 1. The full name is actually Culliver City Chronicles, Call 1-800 Guy Book 1. But hey, who's keeping tabs? And check in the description below for links on how to pre-order. I'm Marcus, and I'll see you next time.